Hey, can anyone hear me? Okay, my audio. Sorry, hold on. I have no idea what's bouncing me off. It's I just closed out some other things. I had the internet running on a different computer. So hopefully we can get through to the end without another interruption. Anyway, Elizabeth Jensen is great. She's a veteran journalist of many different organizations. She she deals with the problems at NPR very head-on and very logical, professional way. But it's a difficult position because she's the in-house scold. She has to go up to a reporter and go, hey, somebody said you did something they didn't like, and tell me about it, right? And then she has the ability to report back and write about all of that. So let's move on to Meredith Publications. Ashley, what does Meredith own? What kinds of things does it publish?
They own Shape magazine as well as Parents and Fitness. So very much like a brand that embodies like health and parenting and like home.
Right.
I
Good
think
housekeeping is
Better Homes and Gardens too.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Family Circle, Good Housekeeping, a lot of older traditional brands that your grandma's bought, my mother bought, but they've had a rough time because they're brands that are considered kind of old and stale and not all that interesting. Amanda has been a superstar there because she really came in and brought them into the digital age in a significant way. She's the chief digital person for Shape and Fitness, which are kind of together now. Like one is still in print and the other one's not, but they both have an online presence. And her challenge is always figuring out what should be in print, what should be just online. Can we use things in two places? How should the fitness brand be different than the Shape brand? Those kinds of things, right? And what's the giant news that's shaking the Meredith world right now?
So they just bought Time for a couple $1 billion. And it was with the help of two brothers who already have their eye on other publications that they kind of want to have part ownership in. They're really interesting, those brothers. And they're not going to have any like editorial say in what goes in publications, but they really helped out a lot in that.
Right. So they're investors, the financial investors. It's the Koch brothers. So these aren't just any brothers. The Koch brothers are like hugely influential in the conservative political world. They are, so we'll leave it at that. But it's an unusual partnership that Meredith is using money from the Koch brothers to buy Time magazine and its affiliated titles. So in the normal order of things, Meredith doesn't buy Time. Time buys Meredith, right? Because Time is the behemoth. Time is the long-standing news weekly. It's part, Time Warner, named for Time magazine. So Time magazine was first. It's an unusual acquisition. It's certainly surprised a lot of people. It's huge, 2.8 billion. The Time collection also includes Sports Illustrated, People magazine. What else is in the Time? Forgetting some of the other, Fortune magazine, Entertainment Weekly, right? So these are some big names that are now going to be under the ownership of Meredith, which is seen as a kind of tired women's magazine group. Okay, so all interesting stuff. Now, is any of this going to affect our guest, Amanda Wolf? Quite possibly. I mean, she follows all this news very closely. Whenever I see something about Meredith, I always send it to her, and she's like, yeah, everybody's on pins and needles. We don't know what it means yet. And so we'll see how that plays out or what she has to say about it.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So Because they own it now, does that mean that like the top execs at Time are going to be out and there's going to be different people from Meredith kind of filling their positions? Or like, what does that look like for Time?
Right. Well, those are the key questions, right? Whenever there's a huge transaction like that, there is going to be some blood on the floor. So Time Magazine just lost its top editor. We mentioned yesterday that Nancy Gibbs was Gibbs or Gibbons, longtime top editor of Time Magazine. She left the job on her own. I don't know. I don't know if it was inspired by this coming acquisition. They just put in a new person. Will that person survive any kind of, reshuffling? We'll see. But like in any organization, when there's a large purchase, you can expect some change at the top of some of the titles, because I would assume that Meredith people are now like assessing the success of all the titles under its ownership. Who's running these? Are they hitting their goals? Are they focused on the right things? Or when you have one group buying another, it's like, we already have 6 people who do that. Let's cut that down to 3, right? There'll be some interior cutting, whether it's going to affect the editorial content or the editorial leadership. I'm sure is what has people most nervous right now. Our next guest is Tim Race, who's now at Fleischman Hillard. And is that, let's see, Alec, are you doing that? No, yeah, Alec, you're doing that one. So how long has Tim Race been over at Fleischman Hillard?
Really recently, he just got over there. He was working at New York Times for the longest of times, and now he is, well, it's a year now.
A year, right.
At Fleischman Hillard, but yeah.
Yep. And so obviously we're going to want to know why he made that switch.
Yeah.
Some of the clips that I read said that Fleischman Hillard was wanting to bring in more knowledge about current newsroom operations and newsroom priorities. And what kinds of things did Tim Race do during his 27 years at the New York Times?
He was the editor for the Energy, Auto, and Transportation section, international business editor of the New York Times in the 2010-2012. He was business healthcare editor, Monday business editor, and then his first job at the New York Times was the technology editor.
Okay.
He did a lot.
And his LinkedIn profile mentions that he directed a project that either won a Pulitzer or was a Pulitzer nominee or finalist or something. Might have been about the pharmaceutical industry, or trying to remember.
The business healthcare editor. Oh yeah, there's our 2009 series 40 Years War on the medical industry, spotty results in its war career, was a 2010 Pulitzer finalist in the explanatory reporting category.
Okay, and I'm sorry, your audio warped a little bit there. The topic was what?
40 Years War on the medical industry, spotty results in its war on cancer.
War on cancer. Okay. I did not read that, so I'm not familiar with the project, but just wrap your brain around that. A team of reporters talking about 40 years of fighting of the medical industry, seeking cures to cancer, and how far are we in that battle, right? We still have a lot of cancers that have very few treatments, and a lot that have treatments. So that's an interesting topic. Did he also do something about a particular pharmaceutical product, a particular drug that was getting?
He covered Obamacare, but you're talking about a specific drug.
Yeah, it seemed like when I read his LinkedIn profile, it mentioned a certain prescription drug.
Vioxx.
What is it?
Vioxx, painkiller.
Yeah.
It was pulled off the market.
Right. Okay. So those are some of the topics that he was involved in. He's been a top level editor for a long time, directing the coverage of other of reporters, which is a job that you don't get as much credit for or glory for, but editors are incredibly important to the whole news gathering process. Editor, it's called editor in the world of newspapers and online, producer in the world of television and radio. But it's that person you go to and you say, okay, here's what I found out from my interviews today. Here's what I found out from my research. And it's that person who can help you conceptualize stories and bring them to fruition. They're just key to the execution of any significant, of all journalism. You need it. They're typically your direct boss, right? The editor or the producer. So sounds like it'll be interesting to hear why he made the switch, right? And then Alec, you're also going to tell us about David Kosick. Did you get
correct
on him? He's the lawyer who's a Miami alum who's hosting our alum mixer.
Correct. Yep. The Whiten case is an international law firm that deals with companies, government, and financial institutions. And he's been there for 30 years. He's kind of just not it's kind of weird. He's a executive committee member. He's the chair of the firm's innovation council. He's a partner and he's an associate. And that's what he's been doing while he's there. So, which is really neat. So.
Well, the key word there is partner. That means he's one of the major domos. He's running the place, and he's taken home a whole lot of money.
Did we get the list of who's going to be there?
Yep. I just wrote me again this morning, and I think that we have it, but I don't want to toggle back to my other computer for fear of getting booted off here again. But I think I have it, and I'll send it to you right when we're done here.
Awesome.
She may have CC'd you. So we know who's going to be at the mixer. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. As Jess said yesterday, or maybe the day before, if David has an associate who is a media attorney or First Amendment attorney, and that person can pop in and say hi, that would be, a nice thing and a legit thing to do. So we'll just have to play that as it comes. Our next guest is BuzzFeed. And Haley, what do you know about BuzzFeed and Shannon Rosenberg?
BuzzFeed is they claim to be the news source for the digital age. So they do a lot more quizzes. They have videos, a lot of other stuff. I can't get my computer to load, but my Wi-Fi is really bad. But they do a lot more of stuff for a new generation of people, is what they claim. They publish news, hard-hitting news stories, and they do quizzes, videos on food and health and fitness writer for BuzzFeed. So she does a lot of how to make healthy recipes that you'll enjoy and stuff like that.
So how many raise your hand if you're a BuzzFeed pretty regular, you check out BuzzFeed pretty regularly? One, occasionally, maybe? Okay. So BuzzFeed has, its reputation in the world is a bit mixed. It's seen to skew to younger readers. Obviously, it's an online-only publication, so it's only been possible because of the internet. And it has, more of a quick read, move on kind of feel, right? But they have really made strides in trying to be a more serious news organization. They do have some work that gets note, deeper reporting, investigative reporting, etc. But what Shannon does is not that. She's a lovely Miami grad. But really what she does is what I would call collating health news, meaning she's reading the best of health news and health reports and so forth, and then she rolls them all into a, her work of the day with 15 links. right? So it's like, oh, the Journal of, Pediatric Medicine today released a report that says thus and so, and then, and then move on to the next item and the next item. So, but I will tell you that she takes her work very seriously. She loves BuzzFeed. She's a huge champion and cheerleader for BuzzFeed. So don't take my somewhat derisive tone to heart, and certainly don't communicate that when we're in the room with her. She thinks BuzzFeed is all that, so we're going to think BuzzFeed is all that as well. And they're trying to become all that. So the other reading that I gave you has to do with BuzzFeed's kind of financial picture. And Haley, did you get a sense of that?
Yeah, they're struggling. Well, they're not struggling, but they're like prediction for this year is like lower than what they wanted, like their revenues to be. And so, I mean, I think it's kind of unexpected for them because they think that they're like the new digital age of news. So it was surprising to people.
Right. So they've been talking about the possibility of what's called an IPO. Who knows what an IPO is? Yes, no, business people. IPO, initial public offering. Right. So they are, in the category of tech-oriented news sites that gets a lot of attention. Vice is in that category. There's a few others. Vice, likewise, is not making its financial predictions for the year. Because BuzzFeed has been talking about moving from private to public, and that's when you have an initial public offering, that's what that is. Because of those plans, they've been, people are watching their financial performance closely. And I don't know if they put out an IPO. There's certain filings that you have to do with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I forget what the file is, but they may have put out a filing that is before an IPO, where they predicted their revenue, and so they put themselves kind of in the public eye. As soon as a company becomes public, things like revenue and profit all become public, right? When you're private, you don't have to disclose that. So usually the first place you disclose your financial condition is with the filing, whose name I can't remember, that comes before the IPO. So they fell a little short, and the IPO now is a question mark. Will they be able to do that in 2018? Now, is Shannon going to know about that and care about that? Maybe a little, right? I think it's fair to ask her whether the financial condition of the company is something that executives are focused on right now, how that's affecting her job. If a company's focused on making more money, are they instituting new ways for her to do her job? Are they limiting her ability to, I don't know, buy more paper clips or travel or whatever, right? So it does filter down to the staff level, and potentially is a focus in the newsroom in terms of discussions with their leadership and so forth. All right. Yeah.
Haley, Haley, did they say any reason like why they didn't hit their mark? Like, were there any reasons that they pinpointed?
I haven't really gotten into it, but if there is, I'll put it on the portfolio and like add it on there, just so I can, because that would be good information to know. Because I thought it was surprising as well, because I see it all the time pop up on my Facebook and stuff, like, and they have a lot of like subgroups in BuzzFeed that are like named different things. So those are all on Facebook, and it was just surprising that they came in lower than they expected.
Yeah,
for sure.
It has to do with their advertising support. They use a lot of native advertising, and the one article that I shared with you guys, the CEO was saying that they're moving. They're now going to be doing more banner ads as opposed to native advertising, even though readers don't like banner ads. So like all media, they're looking for ways to pay the bills. Yeah. I'm sorry, I skipped over CNBC, and that's assigned to you, Ashley. Courtney Reagan.
Yeah, she is a Miami alum, and then she went on to get she studied finance and mass communication, and then she went on to get her MBA at NYU's Business School in economics. So then that kind of boosted her career and kind of gave her more of like a status in that world if you have your MBA and you're reporting business. And so then she went on.
Frozen. Frozen, frozen, frozen.